Hello, my name is Crackling Dark, and this is AQ Report, the show where we'll be explaining, reviewing, and discussing the story of the MMORPG Adventure Quest Worlds. You know what AQW is, you know the basics, you clicked on this video, and AQW is the most mainstream MMORPG you could probably get. It's really middle of the road and it has a severe lack of new players, so we're not going to explain mechanics or dive into the history of Arctic's entertainment unless it's important to the story. We are here for characters, for plot, for setting, and for themes. We'll be talking about the tropes that they use and if they use them well. Finally, we'll be talking that if they use all of these elements to come as near a not definitive conclusion, but at least a good conclusion if the game story is actually worth a damn. And there's no better place to start than the intro. But this is a video game though, which means that the best way to tell a story through the medium is to bind it with gameplay. So we're actually going to start with the character creation, the first impression the game has to offer. The art style is 2D with enough shading and detail to not completely feel flat. We're standing on a pedestal, there's a castle in the background, and we can choose to be a warrior, rogue, mage, or healer. So setting is a medieval fantasy world where magic exists. Let's check the box. The non-existent new players are probably imagining dragons, knights, and dragon knights. I'm partial to healer myself, but for this one we'll go with rogue with spiky hair that will be covered with a hat soon enough. Let's get to the actual gameplay. Opening the game, these characters on the login screen are kinda meaningless to someone who has no idea about the story, but they do admittedly look cool. Choose a server and we get put into a cutscene. A red sky, a ruined castle, a sweet title screen, and our hero standing on a cliff surveying a battlefield. A subtitle, The 13 Lords of Chaos. We join in the middle of a war zone, undead knights versus regular knights, in a dark field and tense but solemn music. A dragon, called it, jets off somewhere and the undead's commander, Sepulture, leads a charge. This is our hero's queue, and we jump down to join the battle and experience the tutorial. We meet Squire Ash, Lord Brentan, Arctic's Paladin, Alina the Potion Maker, Cicero the Smith, Galanoth the Dragon Slayer, Warlick Blue Mage, and a whole lot of other characters, some of whom will probably not be important. There's not a lot of personality in the dialogue, surface level stuff, but we'll let that slide since we are being taught the mechanics, which is a plus because explaining how to do stuff actually helps people experience your game. Yay, basics. Here's something to break up the tutorial though and shows us a glimpse of a wider problem that plagues the writing. There's a lot of problems and this is one of them. In this area, we get to see two comedic cutscenes, one where knights are playing on a catapult and get into hijinks, and another where we push someone in an outhouse down a hill. These moments of levity are weird to say the least. Up to this point, we had been going through the motions and a tone of seriousness had been set with the music and monster design that was quite a serious affair. This addition of humor can be seen as an extreme, but if anime can have massive tone shifts, then this can too, I guess. You need to get used to it though, even if it is an area you need to choose to go to. Getting back on track, we're fighting through undead and are hailed by those we meet as someone who can hit stuff really hard. They are impressed with how hard we hit stuff and we are asked to hit the dragon we saw earlier. Entering a forest area, we meet some more people, different monsters, and an entrance to the next area, Battle on Town. Continuing, you either talk to Twilly, the helpful Moglin, or click the map icon, then Story tab, then Prologue, then Sword Haven Gates, or you get distracted with the city in the background and explore Battle On. We'll go there later, but for now we'll talk to Cleric Dawn who offers to help us to fight Horks with Robina Hood. These guys in the front look weird. die to the boss, go back the way we came, and fight through the castle gates. Yes, that part wasn't really important. Past the city overrun with skeletons, we meet Artix again. It's nice to see a recurring character now, but his dialogue is still quite generic. I appreciate that the town has citizens though and are reacting to the invasion. Continuing up to the castle where punny knights are punning when a skeletal dragon with a fortress on its back appears out the window. It looks kick-ass, and as the undead start pouring in, we fight with Rubina Hood again to get to the throne room. We've been lacking a lot of personal motivation to do all this, so I'm happy we have kinda a goal right now. Meet more punny knights and then reach the king. I don't know what they want us to do though, since we're not cool enough to hang with these people. The king talks to us as if we've already done stuff to be called a hero and says we'll be forced to side for either good or evil, respecting either choice for some reason. The hero then probably scurries into a corner because Sepulture has also come knocking. We establish he's bad with him killing father and they fight. The spectacle is as good as Flash animation can be, and we choose to side with good. Later on, I'll explain why, but choosing good is better for symmetry purposes. All this is for naught, though, as a new character enters the stage. Drakath. Both King and Invader recognize him before getting wiped across the floor. Sepulture proclaims his undeath, though, and Drakath responds by pulling out his core. As Sepulture tries to make his last stand, Drakath shatters the core and the armor falls to the ground, a blast of evil energy surging to the sky. During this, Sepulture's daughter, Gravelyn, watching from the Dragon Fortress, can do nothing but grind her teeth as Drakath also shoots down the dragon before announcing that the fight between good and evil is over and the Age of Chaos begins now. Altion, on the floor and infected with eye disease, is taunted by Drakath as he threatens the world with his 13 Lords of Chaos who will destroy everything. There are a lot of questions. For now, though, we continue the prologue and on with the king's orders to go to Shadowfall, where the evil fortress fell, asking for the help of Gravelyn, the new Shadow Site leader, to defeat this threat and get revenge for his father. Finally, we get some characterization. I know this is a role-playing game, but short of me just talking to myself, I need an actual way to get a voice in the game. This doesn't really represent a chance to roleplay as our responses are built in to be sarcastic, but we had nothing before, so this is great. New allies in tow, we set off, first to a crypt retrieving Sepulture's armor where Chaos has possessed both it and the guards guarding it. Then to a tax collector to collect insurance for the Lord of Evil to be paid out by the Good King's castle. We get thrown in jail, have to fight through King Alkyon's knights and a dragon shaped like a piggy bank, and we can find the tone shift again. Jarring, almost from a completely different story. Anyway, we get the tax, return to Gravelyn, we go back to the king, investigate chaos on the knights in the crypt, and chaos on animals in the forest. It can be missed, but the king sends us to the first town truly affected by chaos in Chiral Valley, Mobius. Here is where the prologue ends. I read somewhere once that it's almost a cliche at this point that all fantasy stories start with a prologue. And hey, if it works, don't fix it, right? An intro is supposed to build promises that we as the audience expect to be fulfilled, and there certainly are a lot of promises being made here. So let's go through those boxes that we have again, going from what I think is the weakest to strongest, and try to identify those promises and if they are set up right. First is setting, and we already called it. It's generic. I don't play D&D, but I imagine this is what a first-time storytelling homebrew results in. Even the Chaos Third Party is a common faction now in most stories, and we already said that if it's not broke, don't fix it, so we won't lament it too much. Besides, the visuals are so striking and recognizable that the fresh coat of paint doesn't make you think this has been done before. There is a simultaneous lack and overload of characters. We have all of these different side people that we just don't care about. Get someone to play through this intro and ask them if they remember even a single name from that first area. They'd be hard pressed. I realized this overabundance might be intentional to make the world feel more lived in, but in all these dialogue boxes, only one has even an attempt at characterizing us, the most important character. I'm not asking for much. I can make up my own character sheet and write down a half-assed backstory. What I want is some kind of motivation. Do we have a personal stake in this beyond we are the hero trademark and the hero protects the land? That wouldn't make sense if we picked the evil side. At the very least, we'd have something to push us along. The events of the story don't feel important because of this. We don't care what's happening if we don't care who it's happening to. Though that's not what everyone who first plays AQW feels, because this game is actually the culmination and amalgamation of three other RPGs: Dragon Fable, MechQuest, and Adventure Quest. King Altion, Sepulture, Drakath, Artix, Alina, and all these characters appeared and were explored in those games. There's transference there of previous characterization and arcs that fans of AE would know about, and even if it's kinda artificial, it gives importance to these characters now. And you want to know a secret? I didn't even play these games. I jumped directly into AQW when I was young and had no problem thinking that this was awesome. Granted, I was 10, but that's the power of the art style again. So fresh you don't care for anything else. Drakath's introduction was very cool though, clever as well, as I believe Drakath is a low tier recurring villain in Dragon Fable, and when he suddenly shows up and owns Sepulture in such a spectacular way, you have to imagine. Filmento here on YouTube has a very good example of how to make excellent villains, and this is one of the techniques. I highly recommend the video. Also, and this is kinda a new addition, if you decide to walk out of the throne room, you'll find yourself in a courtyard with characters that though won't be important for a great while, they give a sense of scope that the royalty extends past just the king and his daughters. Also, here is the start of the 12th chapter in the 13th Lords of Chaos saga. Why? I'm pretty lenient to video game stories. A good plot is a puzzle that slowly builds itself piece by piece, and one of video games' pros in telling a plot is that we, the player, get to build the puzzle the way we want to. We can choose which pieces to start with and which to end. But for a high level zone to just be here is interesting. A new player would never be strong enough to go through it, but if for some reason they do, the story will make a bit less sense and probably have a few spoilers thrown at them. AQW subscribes to the traditional linear plotting and still leaves stuff like this in the open. The more you look at it, the more of a problem it becomes. Plot is like the one thing AQW excels at, so to have something break it is very bad. Anyway, I don't have a transition to theme, but theme in the dictionary is a specific and distinctive quality, characteristic, or concern. I've learned that it can be as specific as a single symbol just recurring throughout the story, or as broad as just a consistent tone that carries in each episode. Most anime that employ the dramatic tone shifts we had earlier have an oddball theming that works well because they focus on comedy to move the plot. AQW doesn't do that. It has an event driven plot and relies on an and then kind of storytelling, and that would be fine if it was consistent. Sometimes the change is so dramatic that it almost feels like a completely different game. In this case, though, the same game but at a different time. The big twist in this video is that there's not actually one intro, but three, and I experienced all of them when they had come out. They all have a different tone and feel, reflecting the three eras the game had. There's Now, which is the present third incarnation, which focuses more on linearity. Gone was once the episodic nature, and here is a long story with structure. We were introduced to a lot of characters because they realized that they needed more time to set up for when they appear later. The second incarnation has you open on an in-game news article. Princess Tara has disappeared and the armies of the undead are marching separately to Swordhaven. You first meet Brenton, go on an adventure with Galanoth to slay a dragon that has attacked a unrelated tower, pick up a book of lore, a book with a funny face that contains lore, then see Artix and Rubina and help them in saving the princess of Swordhaven from a dragon by strapping yourself in a giant arrow and getting fired at said dragon. On its back, though, you find that the princess is actually the one controlling the dragon with a curse string. A series of mini adventures that was about the same length of the present intro, but somehow contains less character setups, and that is explicitly not part of the main plot. This was the weakest in my opinion. It's almost a parody of the early plot's episodic nature, but Brenton is here unironically, so he's not part of the joke. Fun fact, you know a story inside Adventure Quest World is on some level trying to be serious when Brenton is around. Humor in AQW is at its best when it's the main focus or is actively addressed. When you put Brenton next to the Save the Dragon from the Princess story, you get bad Marvel tone, where they think they can be serious and funny at the same time with minimal effort. Being two things at once is hard. If you aren't sure what you want to be, just pick one and stick to it. The present incarnation picked the plot as the focus, and the first incarnation picked humor as the focus. The oldest and first has you standing heroically on a mountain when a lightning bolt strikes the hero, sending him down to an adventure. Here you follow along the instructions of a brutish lore master before rescuing the real lore master and having to fight the imposter. You do the save the dragon from the princess bit again, then you go to Swordhaven to battle the undead. It's fun, it's wacky, and most importantly, it's short. You get the 1-2 punch of the comedy before moving on to the main plot that continues with still a sense of levity with the punny knights. And while the first one was definitely the most fun, I appreciate the attempt to connect the beginning to the overall story more. And here we end, a prologue that went through 3 iterations to try and streamline its oddball tone and better introduce its characters, world, and future tone. The other theme of good versus evil versus chaos will be explored more on other episodes, but for now, let's ask the question: is the intro as it is now good? I would say yes, at least compared to the other two. For what it is, a story that has been going on for 15 years, featuring different artists and storytellers, this intro is probably the best outcome. My only criticism is that the tone clash should be worked on and that we need less proper nouns in the prologue. I don't think the first one can be solved with a quick patch, as it would kinda need a full story overhaul to totally be fixed, as different lead writers have different visions of the game. The second one, though, can probably be achieved by just having some of the names not be names and just be their titles. Label Warlick as just the Blue Mage, and it would probably make the character introductions less intimidating. You don't have to do this to all of them, but some of them have to go. From now on, we'll be comparing every other release to this and see if that 15 years was worth the wait. So thank you for watching and join us next time as we continue the story not with the first Lord of Chaos but the town of Batalon. My grade for this area is C.